Well, greetings, hospitality people. As you know, we're here. The Coffee Commune's all about helping people accelerate their potential to be better tomorrow than today. I'm Phillip and today I'm joined with Brandan Forwood, who runs and owns a company called People Squared. Brandan, welcome.
Thank you.
People, we want to have a chat about all things people, all things staff, and the changing space of it. I started in this industry 34 years ago as a 14-year-old, and it's changed so much, and I want to cover a little bit about those changes, but more importantly, when I started, it was a job, it was a skill to learn and all the rest of it. These days, now we're talking about careers. So how do we, I want to discover some of how do we get people inspired to be in this career of hospitality, because it is a career now, not just a fill-in job, just because of the skill sets required, but also because of the remuneration that's happening. So I want to ask you some of the questions around that, and hopefully our listeners can look at it and say, well, what can I learn from this and all the rest of it. So our audience is cafe owners and roasters and people in the hospitality industry. You're an expert in the people space and all the rest of it. But let's kick off. Tell us a little bit about People Squared.
Yeah, sure. People Squared is a HR consulting business. Essentially, we want to work with owners who are spending a lot of time working in the business to help them work more on and out, and at the same time help them attract, engage and retain the right people so they can get there.
Yeah, and you've said it well, right? Engage and retain, right? But before we can engage and retain them, we've got to find them. So let's unpack that. Tell us, top tips to find the right people for your business in hospitality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people can overcomplicate this. Often it's just thinking about what are the people that you have now, and role modeling who are the best and looking for them when you're interviewing and when you're looking for people. It's not just about resumes.
Yeah.
It's actually thinking about what are the questions that you need to ask people to give you a good sense that this person fits your business. If it is around attracting and engaging, it's, well, what are their aspirations? Where are they trying to go? Are they a uni student? Are they a single mum? Where are they in their life? So when you're interviewing them, get that information, so that then between you knowing what you need for your business and helping them see that the place that you can offer them as a role can help them get to where they're going. It's sort of like this nexus of both.
Yeah, and what stands out there for me is get to know the person, right? We always say hire slow because you want to hire slow, you want to make sure they're right, but you've really honed in on the fact of know the person that you're hiring, and of course know your position that you're hiring for, right? We always talk about, I keep coming back to the Jim Collins, design the seat of the bus first, and then attract the right person. So know that role that we want to hit. And then make sure we're knowing our people, obviously values and all the rest of it. Because
get to know them,
correct. Well, legislation plays a big part in that now, right? In what you can and you can't do, and getting the social laws. So talk us a few tips around that, and make sure when we're hiring. So again, we're proactive, not reactive. Yeah.
Well, I think with a lot of it, it's actually planning and knowledge as well. So there's so much new pieces of legislation and things coming around. Psychosocial hazards. There's some new legislation that's come out. Some of the states, and it'll go even further. It comes down to just basic principles though. It's things like the usual things, talking about sexual harassment, bullying, those types of things. They've always been around.
Yeah.
But the types of things you need to be aware of now are things like giving people role clarity, making sure the work environment is cohesive for them to feel safe and supported. So you're actually expected as an owner and a manager and as a leader to do more, but from what I've learned over the 20 years I've done in HR, the things that you're being asked to do now are just good business practices.
Yeah, and that's a key there, isn't it? They are good business practices, but it makes it more important to hire the right people up front and to know more about them. Because, we have issues such as if somebody already suffers anxiety and all this sort of stuff, you've got to be aware and alert to that. So it's a changing landscape, as we know, and that's why people need to be engaging, obviously, organisations like People Squared to be across it and be part of communities like the Coffee Commune, so that they can get access to that sort of information and expertise. Now, we've found the right person. Let's move on to how do we engage? The best way to engage people in your organisation?
Well, and this goes across all industries, is I often say get the first 90 days right.
Yeah.
So the first 90 days, both in terms of thinking it as an experience, when people come into your business, what do you want them to experience? Sort of like a customer. What's the first 90 days look like? Do you have a plan? Help them understand what that plan looks like, both in terms of what they're going to learn, what you expect from them, and then from that 90 days, I suppose from a business owner's perspective as well, you should know within 90 days if that person fits, if they're up to it, because if you leave it too long, then you can get yourself in a little bit of trouble around if you want to exit them. So there's that aspect to it, but thinking from the engagement perspective, like you said, starting to get to know them, find if they have a good culture fit, find if they've got the skills and the attributes, and in that 90 days, you should be able to assess it and have the system in place.
I think the key too is the regular check-ins, right?
Yes.
From experience to say, well, you've onboarded somebody, you think you found the right person, you don't know what you don't know, they join your organisation, they hit the ground. We all expect our people to hit the ground running, very hard to do, but check in regularly. And I say to people weekly, at the end of the week, and I talk about what have you done well this week and what do I need you to improve on? That constant feedback. But I love that 90-day, build a 90-day plan to make sure that you've outlined it and mapped it, both what's good for the organisation and what's good for the person, because the current law still is 6 months, isn't it, probation period? So you've really got, if you work to a 90-day plan, you've really got 180 days before you can legally, move somebody on because it's not a right fit for them or a right fit for you and the organisation.
And it sets you up. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so then let's move on to the third part. We've onboarded the right person, they've engaged, they're hitting the ground running, and then we get the constant thing. Someone comes along and wants to poach them from us. Give us some tips about retaining stuff.
Well, I think linking back to the engagement part as a starting point is often because we're really busy, focused, trying to run a business, we're trying to be efficient, we can forget, there's research out there that shows that most of us are focused on I suppose leaders and managers, we want to get it right. So we're trying to catch them doing the wrong things so that they do it right. But we're not actually catching them doing the right things and saying, hey, great job with that customer experience. I noticed you did that there. Those little 1%, if you can catch them doing the right things as well as the wrong things, you actually get the right balance between feedback. Often if you've got a staff member and all you're doing is just hammering for the things they're getting wrong, then that does disengage them. And all of a sudden you've got this other place down the road where they know someone who works there and they get a little bit of an idea that it might be a better place to work, then they're attracted to that. So it's a combination of your customer value proposition and how you want people to experience your establishment, but also how do you want your people to experience you internally. So it's getting that connection together. The second thing is pay is obviously always going to be something people want, but the two other things that I always find with businesses are giving people or helping them see the career growth opportunities and flexibility. So I don't just mean they can create their own rosters, but it's about, like I said at the start, if you can understand where they're trying to go, then if you can find ways to help them see you're helping them get to that in the direction that you're stepping them, that's more likely to keep them around as well. And for some people, it isn't always just about the pay. It's usually a couple of these different things. So some people might stay even though around the corner might pay more. It might be, well, this is a great place to work. I can see opportunities and it's great to be working with these people. I think the other part of it is thinking about, from my own experience, I worked in hospitality when I first left school, literally a week after leaving school. I was in my first hospitality job and I stayed there for 5 years. And one of the things that really stood out for me was I actually met my wife working in that same place, and at one point we decided we wanted to buy our first house. So we went and sat with the manager and said, look, it'd be really good if we could have some regular hours because we're trying to get a mortgage. And so we went, yep, absolutely, we can do that. And that was about 3 years in. So we stayed there another 2 years, studying and doing a university. But as a result of that manager getting to know us, understanding us, building trust, we put in and went that extra mile.
Well, it's a big one, right? Job security. We always say one of our strategy over 22 years of owning businesses has always been trying to get people off that hourly rate to a full-time wage so that they can go get loans and the rest of it. But the key there is communication. You've got to be constantly communicating. So whether it's at the onboarding process, whether it's at the engagement process and they're actually with you, and it's whether it's at the retention where you're trying to retain them, it's all got to be about communication and constant dialogue. And we talk about in marketing, it's a WIFM. What can we do for you and what can you do for us? Which is going to lead me to the next question for you. I always say that what people do, so to speak, 9 to 5 is what they get paid award or just above award to keep them incentivized. Bonuses are for going above and beyond. The more you do for the company, the more the company does for you. And you touched on it before, bonuses are not just money. Bonus can be RDOs, it can be flexible working hours, it can be 2 days off in a row, which is a luxury in hospitality, right? But the third one that I talk about is shareholding. And shareholding incentives to me are about people that treat a business like it's theirs. So tell me your thoughts around bonuses and shareholding incentives for hospitality people.
No, absolutely. Well, I think this sort of comes back to having your broader strategy and plan for your business as well. So I've worked with sort of businesses where the way they do reward and recognition might be sort of ad hoc. It might be a Christmas bonus, and then you get to the next year and then people expect, oh, well, you gave me a little bonus last year, so you give me one another time. And I said, it doesn't link to performance. So I think you need to have some type of plan or strategy to go, if we can see them achieving X, Y, Z and help them have clarity over that,
map it out.
It leads to this. So there's actually a plan, a strategy and a linkage to it. And I think in terms of the bonus, also from an employer perspective is when you lift salaries generally, that's a fixed cost, whereas bonuses and other things are variable. So you can use it to have more flexibility.
Good point.
In
Good
terms
point.
of engagement.
Once you increase somebody's set wage, it's set, especially legally, right? And you've got to deal with the fallout if they don't do it right. But versus bonuses and incentives can be performance related.
Absolutely.
You know, and linking it back to that, if you go above and beyond for the business, it'll go above and beyond for you. And if you're treating the business like it's yours, then it will treat you like an owner. That's correct.
Right. And I think the other part of it as well is what from a human behaviour perspective. The reward being as close to the event as possible as well.
Yeah, good point.
So often, if you use generally like a 12-month type of performance cycle, someone might do something in February and then you give them a bonus in August.
Good point.
It sort of doesn't really hit the mark.
Yeah, so that's a key one there, right? A good key strategy is moving away from 12-month bonuses and rewards to say quarterly, or instant compared. And again, it's not just money because of course, as we know, cafe owners are doing it tough. Margins have never been tighter. So people listening to this might say, but we don't have the margin. But again, if you play the strategy that you said, incentivize it above. We normally do 300 coffees a day, but if we hit 500 coffees a day, then X amount of dollars goes into a kitty, or I can give X amount of time off. So it is related to that income and that, which is important. So good segue into the next one. You started in hospitality years ago. As I said, I started 34 years ago. I was on $15 a night, not an hour. 6 hours of work a week, 6 hours a night, and I was getting paid, $15. But I would never showed up for money. I showed up to learn skills, and I was fortunate to have a break in the industry. People have never been paid so much in this industry, right? And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it flows on to the wages have never been higher, but the productivity's never been lower. And I'll quantify that. Most people now are doing at-table ordering with technology, or you order at the counter. And you've got staff now that are virtually just delivery people. They're bringing out food to the table. They're putting they're supposed to put cutlery on the table, salt and pepper shakers, and they're not even doing that, yet they're getting paid like they never have. So what we're talking about is, and the question is, how do we deal with the issue that people are getting paid more than they ever have, but the productivity is low? So those watching, give us some tips around that.
Yeah. I think one thing that pops up is that often as leaders, managers, or further through the career, we have an expectation that people know what we know. First and foremost, and secondly, when I was in hospitality 20 years ago, it's a very different world to what it is now as well. So I think you have to, in a way, show people and help them understand why, first and foremost, to do it. Secondly, there's this balance point between supporting people and stretching them. And I think as leaders and managers, we often catch us that we're more in that stretch zone because we're trying to be efficient and get the most out of people. But coming back to that 90-day onboarding people is when people are trying to learn a new skill. Dan Pink wrote a book and looks at drive, and every human being wants purpose, mastery, and autonomy. So the thing is, people do want to strive to be better. It's often they don't know what better is.
Yeah, correct.
So it's helping them go, well, this is what great looks like, and this is why we're going to do it, and I'm going to help you
on the journey
and get the team responsible to help each other.
I love that. It comes back to communication, right? And constant. And we are in different times. It's not a set and forget anymore. It really is about coaching them. And I mean, I spend 70% of my time in my position as the top of the tree, coaching my team, right? Because it is a moving juggernaut, and it is all about being supported. And what I found is people want to be feel engaged, they want to be motivated, and they want to be inspired. and unless you're constantly setting that, you can't, if they don't know why they're turning up to work or what purpose they have, they can't be engaged. And if you're not constantly coaching and working with them and seeing, you can't motivate them or inspire them. Tell us some of the resources available to the hospitality industry, business owners, to be able to get the best out of their people. So
sure.
you were just talking to me about before that TEDx has brought out. What other tools and stuff are available?
Well, in a general sense, I think as a leader or manager, if you're going to get better, you have to practice the art of getting better. So it is through learning, through whether it's theory or practice. One of the things is just general reflection as a leader or manager. So are you getting better? How do you know if you're effective as a leader or a manager? So it starts with you as a leader, thinking and finding ways to get insight and feedback. So
keep a diary.
Journal.
Journal. Get feedback
from your staff. In terms of how you attract and engage, I use behaviour profiling, I use DISC, but there's a whole bunch of other ones out there. Even if you literally went online and had a look at it, where this can be helpful is you may not actually do the behaviour profiling with your team, but you can find ways to ask questions of people when you're interviewing and as you're going through that process of onboarding them, depending on the different style people have. Some are more sort of on the go and they'll be autonomous and make it happen. Other people need a little bit more support. So coming back to getting to know people, but if you can start to understand people generally and the different styles that are out there, you don't have to love them all and be the same as them all, but you can identify someone by the way they speak, the way they talk, the way they act, same like a customer. That's a starting point. Then I think on top of that is bringing them together, whether it be team meetings, team workshops, things where you come together and help them learn, help them get to know each other, and help them get to understand where you're trying to take the business and get that clarity. Because often, as I said, you expect people just know that because this is what I know and this is the direction I'm taking the business. Not everyone knows it.
And on that point, what's your thoughts around sharing your numbers? Because cafe owners are doing it tough. Margin, most of them are breaking, some are not even breaking even, a lot are just breaking even, and very few are making a profit. But yet a lot of staff might be demanding higher wages, or they might be demanding more time off. What's your thoughts? Because I'm a big believer in communication, I'm a big believer in transparency. So I believe in sharing your numbers with the team and going, look, right now, it's 5% profit. I can't go and then lift everyone's wages 8% because then we go backwards. Now, I don't expect to be making high profits right now because it's not the right environment, but I want you to have a look and be reasonable with what we're doing. What's your thoughts on that?
I totally agree, and I suppose it depends on the maturity. So it might not be you're telling all your staff at all levels what your whole P&L is, but if it's operationally, it might be things like you've said, that there's new laws coming in. So it's explaining to them, we're coming into Christmas, there's these things that are going to happen, so we're under pressure because we've got to do these. So it's, I suppose, trying to help them. They've been at home, they're with their family, they come in, they're not always thinking about, whereas as the owner or the manager, you're always thinking about all these different things. It's just helping them get an insight into what's going on for you, helps them.
And set the scene, right?
It does,
So tell me, what would your advice be to cafe owners right now, saying, you know what, I don't have any plan for my staff, I don't really have any programs in place, what's a good place to start?
I would literally go and take them and just have a 15-minute conversation with them and just check in with them. That's where I would
start. Do a check-in with your team?
Just go and talk to them and just see how they're going. And as well as that, one of the things you can do is share what are the things you're trying to work on, or as a leader as well. Because often when people, as leaders, they want to get better, they will just say to their staff, I want to be a better leader or manager, what could I do? And people clam up. But if you can show a little bit of vulnerability and say, look, I'm someone who normally is quite challenging, and what I'm trying to do is be more supportive. So part of it's having these conversations with you to get to know you better, and they're more willing to help you get better, but they can see there's a personal side to you as well.
And what would your advice be to the cafe owner that sits there and goes, well, that's all good and well, but I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, and I just can't do it? What would your advice to them be?
I would say, what's the cost of not doing it?
Yeah, good answer. Because I would say you can either sit there and do nothing and let the sink ship, or you can sit there and paddle and get moving forward, right? So 100%. If you do nothing, nothing's going to happen. So it's a big one. Where do you see the industry in the next 12 months to 24 months in terms of people?
Well, I think from the information that I've listening to the different business I'm working with, when they're doing engagement surveys, what they tend to find is most of their focus is on the 18 to 24 year olds, and they tend to find they're quite disengaged.
Yeah.
And the thing that I feel with it is they cop a bit of slack, the 18 to 24 year olds, but they're living in a totally different world.
Yeah.
And like an example being, when you bring in 18 to 24 year olds into your business, anything technologically, they're going to pick it up so fast. So it's more about not worrying about training them on the systems and processes. It's probably more about
communication,
customer experience, communication.
Yeah, good point.
And teaching them those things and helping them realise the benefit of it. But as I was saying to you, I've gone 20 years on in my career, and the people that I have met, and once I get to know them, that they've worked in hospitality, you can tell why.
Yeah.
Because they learn those skills early in their career. It translates. These people are directors in a business, they're not just working for another.
Good point there, because, and it's a key point for people to understand, is are you spending too much time training your people on the technology versus not training them on the people skill? And it's something I say to people all the time when I say, you might be technically brilliant, but if you're not good with people, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
So there's a key tip there, is start training your people and focus more time on how you want your staff treating your customers, the communication style, even the way they dress, the way they engage, 100%. The types of conversation. Yeah. Spend more time on that, because the 18 to 24 is already going to have the technology. Yep. I see it with my daughter, who's now working here at the Commune. Yep. At 15, they literally did 10 minutes till training with her. Yep. Never used a till in her life, but it's like a computer. Yep. 10 minutes of till training, and then they spent hours with her on engaging and looking at customers in the eye, and smiling and clearing the plates. So it's a great tip, and it's something that people probably forego and understand. Yeah. Now, here's one for you. How do we, attract the younger people? I was 9 years in a place that treated everyone poorly, did everything wrong. People don't last 9 hours in a business now if they don't like it, right? So what's your message to the young aspiring people out there that are too quick to judge? And some employers are quick to judge. Someone starts one day and go, no, they're garbage, right? What's your message, but to the emerging leader, the 18 to 24 year old that starts in a business and goes, no, this isn't for me? What would you be saying to them if you were coaching them? Yeah,
well, what I would say to them, and this is probably hindsight from my knowledge, is that they probably don't realise the things that they're going to learn early on in their career in hospitality will translate into their later career. And I think that's where both in terms of helping them see that, but also the leaders and managers, is in a way trying to find what makes them tick or where they want to go, and helping them see that this helps them. And it's not just in terms of the career growth and the learning, but the challenge as well. Like, hospitality is a high pressure industry. So when you go through that and experience it builds your resilience, it helps you learn to deal with conflict, interact with people. Like, I had everyone from, all castes of society coming in, and I'm an 18-year-old at 8 o'clock serving people. You learn pretty quick on your feet. So that, I think it's finding that mixture between support and stretch.
Yeah, it's a great point, Brandan, because they did a study years ago, and I think it was actually commissioned by either Australian Institute of Management or Restaurant Caterers, I can't remember, but it was a study around the IQ and EQ of a hospitality worker was one of the highest out of all industries, because they'd learnt that emotion engagement, they'd learned that empathy, they'd learned to contextualise, they had to be quick on their feet, they knew how to deal with complaints quickly, and they found that the hospitality industry workers had one of the highest IQs and EQs. So it makes fair comment about what you're saying. On the flip side, I just want to unpack this one. I was saying for years ago, McDonald's was a great feeder to the hospitality industry. My nieces, who are now in their 30s and both got high-powered lawyer jobs, one's for legal aid and another one's was just finished up, I think, for working for Zuckerberg, Meta, whatever he calls it now. But they started at McDonald's. They transitioned from McDonald's to work for me at DeBella Coffee, and already I could see how they were programmed to engage with people, look at them in the eye, follow systems, processes and procedures. They came here, we taught them then the humanised side and the more interactive, and they learnt about coffee and they learned how to make coffee and all the rest of it. And then they went off to do uni degrees, and like I said, now they're both kicking many goals in their legal field. McDonald's got rid of all that. Right, and where I'm going to with this is the impact of government decisions, where they all of a sudden got rid of the 14 and a half and 15-year-old and 16-year-old wages and started putting them through the roof and making things, different, where McDonald's turned around and said, I'd rather hire older people, or better still for them, but not for the industry. We're going to digitise and go technology. So if you had government in front of you given that scenario and that progression of how they make a decision in their ivory tower, and it affects, down the stream, what would you be saying to them around, hospitality and HR and the rest of it?
Well, I think it's make it easier for them to play the game. So I think everyone realizes that there needs to be rules in a game to play, but I feel like it's help listen to the industry and pragmatically help them understand if there's a certain direction things need to go because of legislation. Everyone seems to understand that, but there's this balance point between helping them actually bring it into place, but realizing they're trying to run a business, they've got all these pressures, and they're trying to attract and engage in a market that's very competitive. So to me, it's actually listen and bring pragmatic practices in and expectations that will support.
And collaborate with people like yourself, collaborate with people like us, before you start making decisions is a big one that we talk about. But even like yourself, coming to organisations like you and go, right, you've looked at it from all the level, from the start of a journey to the end of a journey and all the complaints and everything in between. What's best practice that we can put in place for the benefit of an employee or the benefit of a leader or a worker or a business owner? So, I mean, that's the key point for me there is collaboration and work with people like, People Squared and Coffee Commune and stuff like that, so that we're not just getting stuff pushed down to us. Because you hit it, is it there to help the industry or is it there to hinder the industry? And unfortunately, a lot of the stuff they're doing is hindering the industry. And the key one, which a lot of listeners will be listening to this going, yeah, you're right, is the international student visa changes, where they've now capped the hours at 24 hours.
I know.
And you would see this left, right and centre, right? Firstly, how does somebody survive on 24 hours of work a week? You can't, right? And two, how do you pay somebody only 24 hours a week work? So you're building a black economy, but no one can pay them cash anyway because no one's paying cash. Right. And of course, we don't condone that. But so they're cutting their nose off to spite their face, right?
100%.
In your views on that as an expert in the people space?
Yeah, well, I think coming back to listening, I literally have an example of a couple that we met 12 years ago who are students. We had lunch with them last Sunday and they're talking about exactly this. They've got great work ethics and they come from a country where it's like,
they want to work.
They want to work and they're restricted now. So I'm going, well, that's obviously not effective. So
it's not a win. And how do they survive between them on 48 hours a week work, right? So my message to you, the last question to you is this, and as you know, I love putting scenarios in place and then asking the question around. So I go on the chat forums. Baristas looking for work, Brisbane Cafe Network, Australian Owners Cafe Network, and I find, and this is not an opinion, I want your opinion as an expert. I find the following data, which we analyse to the following. The data is Australian male, female, 16 to 24, 25. The post reads, looking for work 20 to 25 hours per week, close to home, can't do weekends, can't do night times. On the other side, we see all the posts from somebody who's come from Colombia or come from the Philippines or come from another country that says looking for full-time work, will travel anywhere, flexible working, willing to learn, etc. Unpack that for me.
Well, I think it does come back to different societal values and the individual, and I think what we're faced with here is. We've got 5 different generations in the workforce. That's never happened before.
Interesting.
We've got a world where technology is playing a huge role and we're going through these shifts in so many different ways, geopolitically, etc., where it's probably the hardest time I would have ever seen to lead and manage a business in any industry, anywhere in the world. And what I keep coming back to is you just got to simplify it back down. So if you're trying to attract and engage the right people, messages like that, it's looking for culture fit, because you can train people on skills. So to me, it's look for culture fit and find people that will come in and they don't have to be exactly the same as you and have exactly the same philosophies, but you'll get a sense of that. And I think once you do that and you can start to build a team where there's shared responsibility around it, like when I had my first hospitality job, part of the reason why I went there was there was about 6 or 7 people that I went to school with that were either higher than me or in lesser grades. And so that attracted me as well. So I think it's trying to find and step back and think and plan some of these things. Think about culture fit and give people the opportunity to show you what they've got.
Yeah.
Don't just write them off from the
I know I throw a tough question there, but
Yeah.
I always say hire on attitude and teach the skill.
Yep.
Because in our industry, we're lucky we can do that. I mean, different for a brain surgeon, lawyer, all the rest of it, but in our industry of hospitality, I think some of the people listening would probably have an aha moment there and go, well, geez, maybe I've been looking for too much technical skill and not enough attitude. I think we really are in an era right now where it's hire on the attitude and then spend the time to teach the skill. And the key one too is, and we're doing it here as we speak, it's not always the owner or the leader that needs to do the training.
Yep.
You know, buddy them up with people in the workforce. It helps build culture. It helps them, get rub off on what the expectations are. But of course, the standard and the pace has got to be set from the top.
Well, an example that I heard in one of the TED Talks I was listening to recently was in a bar where they had the cocktail menu, and what they would do is they would just offer. They would have 3 times a year where they would let them come in. It wasn't paid, but their choice was to come in and decide what the menu was. And then once they determined the one that it was, how proud the people were to have their cocktail on the list. But what they said is they made sure that every other person in there made it exactly the way that they stipulated it should be now that it's got on the menu. So they built this automatic engagement, autonomy, purpose.
Good culture and good fun, right? Because I'm sure they got to drink the cocktails as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, Brandan, fantastic. If people want to get a hold of yourself and know more about, where can they do that?
So we've got our website, which is peoplesquared.com.au, and Brandan at peoplesquared.com.au.
Awesome. Thanks, champion.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So we've just had Brandan Forwood here from People Squared, and as you can see, some really great relevant points there to unpack. But the key things, hire on attitude and then teach the skill. Make sure that you've got the traction piece right to get the right people on the right seats of the bus. Then make sure you're engaging them right, and make sure you're working on strategies to retain them. Brandan is one of the class acts in this field. He doesn't talk about theory, he puts the theory into practice, and it's all about you executing. So we look forward to seeing you being better tomorrow than today.